Greetings. Welcome to the Dr. J Vlog series. It's Saturday, February 15th, 2025. On Saturdays, we look at sports and humor, sometimes a little bit of both. In truth, though, if you're watching this vlog currently, there's a very good chance I actually might be in Hawaii at this moment. Not to brag. It's not like I'm living the lifestyle of the rich and the famous or the millionaire class or the billionaire class. But, speaking of millionaires, I'm of the view that big money has, in some respects, fundamentally altered the nature of professional sports. And not necessarily for the better. I just don't find the product these days, regardless of the sport, all that compelling anymore. With one exception. So I'll explain why and what I mean by that in today's vlog. Of course, this, as ever, just reflects my personal opinion based on my interpretation of the evidence and my life experience. Sporting fans everywhere will have plenty of reasons to disagree with my assessment. And that's always the nature when we're talking about sports, right? In sports, we love to argue about our favorite teams and our players, or who's going to win the game, or why we won or why we lost, or who's the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and so on and so forth. So I'm just looking specifically then at the financial aspect, and mainly just today in terms of player salaries. So to be fair, the salaries these days are the result of the blood, the sweat, the tears, the unbelievable sacrifices that the pioneers of the different sports in all the different professional leagues that they've committed to over the many years, decades literally, who've developed rather compelling products, who've tapped into these huge markets these days driven by the television ratings and advertisers and so forth. So there's really, nothing to complain about in that sense. And more specifically, I don't want to blame the players at all, right, for pursuing their financial well-being and, wanting to make as much money as possible. I mean, don't we all want to do that, at least in terms of our different lines of work? But if you look at the top salaries these days, it's quite remarkable. So the salaries for professional baseball and football are off the charts, and the NBA's closing in pretty quickly as well. So Juan Soto, I'm sure some of you know, signed with the Mets recently for $765 million for 15 years. Yeah, that's more than $750 million to play baseball. Good for Juan. That surpassed the LA Dodgers signing of Shohei Ohtani for $700 million. But for only 10 years, so $70 million a year. Or consider Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, who just lost the Super Bowl, and he's had a remarkable career in his, about 7 short years. It's incredible what he's accomplished. But he signed a 10-year, $500 million contract himself in 2020. So that's pretty good. And then consider Cristiano Ronaldo. Those of you who follow not Major League Soccer. Well, you might follow Major League Soccer, but just international soccer, right? He's playing for the Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia for $200 million per year. So again, it's just unfathomable. In the NBA, Jason Tatum's making, he signed the current largest NBA contract at $313 million over 5 years, and that's going to eventually be surpassed. And I expect the NBA salaries, the top salaries, to continue to skyrocket in the coming years with the newest television contracts that are coming up and so on. So, and regardless, even now, the top players, the top couple of dozen of players in the NBA are making about $50 million, or even in many cases more than $50 million a year right now. We thought it was incredible when Jordan signed the first $30 million a year deal back with Washington, I believe. 2000, 2001. But again, the player salaries are just, in the NBA as well, are just continue to grow dramatically. So, and times obviously have changed with respect to professional sports, what they mean, what they represent, and the business of sports. And let's face it, that's the core of the issue. Sports, or professional sports, are a business. And as with businesses anywhere, that has pros and cons. There's good things that come out of that, and there are the frustrating elements on the business side. So if you think back to when players started becoming millionaires, or that metric of making $1 million, it's remarkable how the three major sports all sort of coincided right around that, in the same year, basically, 79, 80. In the NBA, you saw the first players ever making $1 million, Bill Walton and Moses Malone. They had contracts for $1 million a year in 79, 80. Those were the first two there. In the NFL, it's interesting, and not a particularly well-known fellow by the name of John Wesley Lamb Jones. He was a wide receiver. He didn't have a long career. He played for about 5 years with the New York Nets, but he became the first $1 million player, if you include his signing bonus, in NFL history, also in 1980. And then that same year, most of you will have heard of Nolan Ryan, the remarkable pitcher. The MLB has a number of records for strikeouts, 7 no-hitters as a pitcher. So Nolan Ryan became the first $1 million a year baseball player as well in 1980. So from the perspective then of the athletes themselves, I'm more than willing to agree that the athletes have to sacrifice tremendously to get where they are, to ascend to the top of their professions, both physically and in terms of their personal and family lives. Their salaries partly reflect that remarkable amount of training that they have to do, okay? And many of them really do, most of them really have to give up their childhoods and a big portion of their young adult lives in order to train, in order to reach their peaks and stay at their peaks, to be able to compete at that level. Perhaps most significantly, some also quite knowingly even compromise their short-term and often their long-term health on behalf of their sports. Most notably, of course, this occurs in the National Football League. The number of concussions that the players suffer, the neurodegenerative diseases that afflict so many former players, but in other sports as well, right? Many of the players suffer from chronic conditions, arthritis, and just aspects of their bodies that never heal properly, based on the stress and the tears and the destruction that they have to suffer in the course of their professional lives. So all that said, most of them do it willingly, in the sense that they want to be professionals. They want to do this for a living. Many want to make the big bucks that come with the profession these days as well. So, and we also know finally that they're only going to make the big salaries for a fixed number of years, right? So we can't really begrudge them their desire to maximize their returns while they're in their peak years. And they are worth their salaries too, quite frankly, in terms of their owners, or governors, as they say in the NBA. The superstars and the franchise players in particular help the teams and help their owners to turn these massive profits, again, depending on the markets, but through the ticket sales, through the advertising revenues, and some of the wealthier fans, of course, are going to pay these outrageous prices, premium prices, to have their special access, whether it be in terms of where they sit in the arena, and usually that involves some degree of access to the players and ownership as well, and so forth. But regardless, the athletes as well provide, countless thousands of others the opportunity to earn a living as well, through managing the concessions, the merchandise, the street vendors, the taxi cab drivers, or anybody involved in transportation, cleaning the facilities, and much, much more, including all the folks who work directly for the specific teams. And there's no question that there's a basic economic principle involved here as well in terms of professional athletes who represent, they stand at the top of their proverbial food chains in their respective sports. And I don't begrudge anyone for trying to earn as much as possible and for being paid, in the case of the NBA, as one of only 450 players. There's 450 jobs, if you think of it roughly as 15 spots on a roster across 30 teams. And by comparison, you look at somebody like myself, there's tens of thousands of people who could do my job, at the drop of a hat, and many countless thousands more if they wanted to pursue a PhD in my field or what have you. And that's the difference, because no matter how hard I might have wanted it, or if I worked really hard or sacrificed and trained, did all the right things, I never was going to enter professional sports, in any sport, right? I might have been able to play some college ball and at a low level and that sort of thing, but that's it. Right? Only a tiny fraction of the athletes and the players who were quite serious and who play university or college ball and whatever the sports, only a fraction of them go on to play professionally. So these really are the best of the best. Many of them do have skills and body types, but as well as the training, etc., that goes into, becoming the best of the best. And most of us are just never going to be that, at least with respect to athletics. We can be the best of the best perhaps in other fields and maybe in our chosen professions and so on. But again, the point is that there are people who are elite, and they're elite athletes, just as there are elite, dancers who are also, by the way, incredible athletes, and elite musicians, or you name it, the best of the best in any, athletic or creative endeavor. So all that said, here's my concern, or here's why I'm not as into sports as I used to be, professional sports. We have this new class, right, of multi-millionaires, and this growing gap then between the salaries in professional sports compared with the rest of us. They are the nouveau riche, but they live in a world, in a stratosphere, if you will, that's completely different from anything that perhaps you and I know. And I say that not out of jealousy or resentment, not in the least, at least not speaking for myself, but rather because it pushes them further and further away in social space, in terms of lived experience and relatability. Now, to be fair, that may not matter to many folks at all, right? What do they care? My point is simply that I'm more interested, I should say, in admiring athletes for doing incredible feats of human achievement, not in terms of how much money they make, right? So from my standpoint, it really doesn't matter to me how much money they make. I understand they want to make more and they want to be able to make really great salaries, again, as we all do. But the point is that we'd all like to be paid more. My gripe is that there are these untold billions of dollars that we invest in professional sports. And this takes away from the thing that I most admire about sports. So the reason that I played sports growing up and watched sports, or have watched sports over the years as well, and certainly after my playing days ended. So the salaries are a key driver in every profession, sports and non-sports alike. But the thing is that for many of us, and again, I can't speak for you, I'll just speak for myself. If I won the lottery, I'd still show up at work the next day. There's no question about that, because I love what I do. And many folks do. Right? Again, across a whole range of professions. And many athletes love what they do too. Right? Let's be clear about that. But I have to say that it seems to be much less often the case than in the past. Now, how do I know that? It's difficult to measure passion or the love of the game, but not impossible. And it's the same with the passion and the love of the game that we all have, no matter what our profession. So we could measure the passion, the love of the game through a variety of different mechanisms. We could look at, excuse me, for example, how often do people show up to play? Every day. Just as, we would say about ourselves. How often do we show up to work? Every day. And are we fully engaged in the work that we do? We could measure that. We could measure that for the athletes as well. Do we take great joy from what we do? Are we happy to be there, to connect with the many others on the job? And conversely, do we feel bad if we're not able to get to work, or if we somehow let our coworkers down? What percentage of people just want a paycheck from their jobs and nothing else? Well, many do. Again, my concern is the extent to which that attitude sometimes seems to have seeped into the lifeblood of many professional sports. And so with professional sports, the point is I don't see as much passion as I used to. If measured by the average number of games, for example, that are played per season compared to in the past, the athletes are playing far less. And that's accepted and acceptable. That's my one sort of old man rant feature for this vlog. The importance of showing up and giving your best every day, if possible, right? Getting to work every day on time and giving your very best. And knowing that other people are counting on you. So when I see a Willis Reed hobble into the arena and inspire the New York Knicks, tied at 3-3 to win Game 7 and win the NBA championship back in 1970. That's passion. That's commitment. Or many years later, quarter of a century later, when Michael Jordan plays and he can barely, he's deathly ill, so it would seem, but he manages to gut it out and win Game 5 against Utah in the 1997 NBA championships. And there's thousands, countless other examples. And indeed, we do typically see that passion of which I speak emerge or reemerge many times in the playoffs. And so that's when I actually tend to watch professional sports. That's the time where I see that raw competition, that seeming love of the sport, that wanting to win, that wanting to the love of competition and the passion that we've all had for the games that we've played over the years. And so that's the one exception I have in terms of professional sports. I can't afford the tickets to go to the playoffs. I can barely afford, I don't even go to a regular season game. And quite frankly, why would I? If I can get a better seat at my own home or on the other side of the ledger, if I'm not sure that my favorite player is going to show up or be available that night and so forth. But I do like the playoffs. I still I'll watch them when I can. I have certain teams that I'll, prefer to win. I don't really care that much anymore, but, why not root for somebody? But more, I'm interested in the ways, the degree to which the players are motivated to be at their very best, right? And so that's also why I think I'll probably always love amateur sports and all of the individual sports where people are pushing the limits of human achievement more than anything else. Yeah, they'd like to win the gold medals. They want to get the endorsement deals too. But to me, the most compelling facet of sports is the drive and the passion for excellence, to achieve what no one's ever done before in your chosen sport. Or someone pulls off the most incredible play in a team sport, for example, something that we haven't seen before. So it's these unique accomplishments that leave me in awe as a sports fan, a casual fan now at most. But they also have this kind of cross-fertilizing effect because I find myself inspired and to want to do something special in my own field. And so I walk into the classroom every time and I try to have the metaphorical best game of my season or of my career. In other words, the best lecture of my career. Of course, I'm not going to achieve that because just like there are 82 NBA games, regular season games, one's going to be your very best, again, depending on what statistical measures you use, and one's going to be your worst, and most are going to be average or somewhere around whatever constitutes average for you in your life. And that's probably true for all of us in our different fields as we go into work 5 days a week, 7 days a week, whatever it is our work schedules are. We love having a great day of any kind. But my point is that I try to do it every game, every lecture. I walk in there and I'm actually, and I'm not making this up, genuinely kind of motivated and psyching myself up and thinking, okay, is this going to be my best game? Because I'd like to, if I could, every time out there, just like if I were bowling, I'd love to roll the 300, the perfect game, or I'd love to pitch the no-hitter, right? Or, whatever it is, I want to be able to, if I were playing basketball, I want to have I want to make every shot, that sort of thing. And so the difference is I just don't have to wait for the playoffs to get motivated. You see, in other words, I'm motivated every single time I walk into the classroom. And I'd feel awful about myself if I didn't. And I think there are a lot of people out there, a lot of you, in all kinds of different fields who are, again, passionate, who give it their all every single day in every line of work. And that's all I'd like to see then in professional sports too. And if I saw that, I think I would watch more often. Anyway, that's it for today. I hope you'll watch the Dr. J vlog series a little bit more often too. Or remember to hit like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, though, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives and nurture love in your hearts. We'll see you soon.